Chapter 1. The Weight of Worlds. The ground shook with a deep, guttural roar as if the very moon exhaled in pain. Jagged towers of crystal, glowing faintly with trapped radiation, splintered and cascaded down the ravine walls. Alarms shrieked through the calms, a piercing chorus against the thunder of rock falls. Dust and ash filled the air, glowing like embers as they caught the twin suns' dying light. Elias Kane stumbled forward, boots skidding across uneven shale. His respirator mask crackled with static as his heart slammed against his ribs. Through the red haze of warning lights in his visor, he could just make out the silhouettes of alien miners scrambling back toward the reinforced transport. Their elongated forms moved with eerie precision, their four-jointed limbs carrying them away from danger in seamless coordination. Not one of them looked back, but Elias heard it. A cry, thin, cracked, barely human in tone, but undeniably alive. He froze, chest heaving. The noise came from the rubble pile near the collapsed ridge, where shards of luminescent crystal protruded like broken bones. The wail carried again, weaker this time, nearly smothered beneath the grinding of settling stone. Someone's still in there. Elias shouted into his comm. The alien foreman's voice came back, calm and clipped. "Leave it. The risk is unacceptable. We cannot save what is already condemned." Elias turned, staring through the ash. "She's not condemned. She's alive." Silence. Then the channel cut. The others were already retreating. Cursing under his breath, Elias sprinted toward the collapse. Dust stung his eyes, and every breath burned his throat, but he pushed harder, driven by the sound of that voice. As he climbed over smoking shards of crystal, he saw her, half buried beneath the rocks. The alien girl couldn't have been more than 16, her lithe frame pinned at the hip by a slab of stone that shimmered with dangerous radiation. Her skin, pale and faintly iridescent, was slick with blood. Two silver eyes locked onto him, wide with pain and terror. She whispered something in her language, voice trembling. The translator in Elias's suit lagged for a moment before spitting out the fractured words. "Go, leave, danger." "Not a chance," Elias muttered, dropping to his knees beside her. The heat radiating from the crystal seared through his gloves, but he dug in anyway, prying at the edges. His muscles screamed, the sharp edges biting through his sleeves. The slab barely budged. Behind him, the ground quaked again. Stones tumbled dangerously close. The girl shook her head, lips trembling. "They left. You must too." Her accent was sharp, her tone laced with resignation, as if she had already accepted her fate. Elias gritted his teeth. "Yeah, well, humans don't quit that easy." He braced himself, shoving his shoulder beneath the shard, trying to lever it up. Agony burned through his arm, but the rock shifted an inch, enough for the girl to cry out and clutch at him, desperation replacing resignation. Her touch was cold, trembling, so fragile compared to the unyielding weight crushing her. "Listen to me," Elias said through clenched teeth. "You're not dying here, not while I'm breathing." The hum of his suit's servos kicked in, amplifying his strength. Sparks flickered across the surface of the crystal as his gauntlets scraped, sending little arcs of energy into the dust-filled air. His vision blurred with sweat as he forced the slab upward, centimeter by agonizing centimeter. The girl gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. Why would you?" Elias's lips curled into a grim smile. "Because where I come from, no one gets left behind." With a roar, he heaved. The rock tilted, teetered, and finally crashed aside with a seismic crack. Elias collapsed forward, chest heaving, lungs burning with the acrid air. He looked up to see the girl free, but barely conscious. Blood smeared the dust along her side. He scooped her up, ignoring the way his arms trembled, and staggered back toward the evacuation transport. The alien miners had gathered at the ridge, watching him approach in silence. Their expressions were unreadable, their large, luminous eyes reflecting no joy at her survival, only cold calculation. The foreman stepped forward, voice like a blade. "You risk contamination. You endangered yourself and us." "Why?" Elias shifted the girl in his arms. Her fingers twitched weakly against his chest, her breath shallow but steady. He met the alien's gaze, fire in his eyes. "Because she's alive. That's reason enough." The silence stretched, broken only by the distant crackle of unstable crystal veins and the hum of the transport's engines. The aliens exchanged glances, their movements sharp and mechanical, their culture's law whispering through every gesture. Survival above all. Elias knew then his defiance wasn't just reckless. To them, it was heresy. But as the girl clung to him, refusing to let go, he also knew one truth that burned brighter than the twin suns above. Humans were different. Humans were stubborn. And sometimes stubbornness was the only thing that saved a life. Chapter 2. The Girl with Silver Eyes. The transport's engines droned with a low, steady hum, filling the metallic corridors with a vibration Elias could feel in his bones. The ship was an angular construct of alloy and crystal, its walls lined with faintly glowing veins that pulsed like living circuitry. Alien glyphs shimmered faintly on the panels, unreadable to him, but beautiful in a way that reminded him of starlight scattered across black water. Elias sat in the med bay, his gloves scorched and his arms wrapped in fresh bandages. The smell of antiseptic clung to the air, mingled with something sharper, like singed ozone and bitter herbs. The alien medics moved with swift, deliberate gestures, their long limbs and translucent skin reflecting the cold light of the sterile chamber. They never spoke to him, never met his eyes. On the cot beside him lay the girl, her silver eyes half-lidded, her breathing shallow but steady. The faint glow beneath her skin, bioluminescence threaded through alien veins, flickered with each breath like a failing lantern. She winced when the medics touched her, but made no sound. When they finished, the medics stepped back, hands folded neatly behind their backs. The foreman was there too, his towering frame casting a long shadow across the room. His voice was flat, almost metallic. "She is alive, but tainted." Elias frowned. "Tainted?" "She was crushed under half a mountain. She's a survivor." The foreman's eyes narrowed slightly, a shimmer of silver against the pale translucence of his face. "She should have died there. To crawl back from such weakness is dishonor. Among us, she is no longer fit to stand beside her kin." Elias's jaw clenched. He looked at the girl, saw the way her slender fingers twitched against the blanket as though she could feel the judgment pressing down on her even in half-consciousness. He turned back, voice sharp. "Where I come from, surviving against the odds isn't weakness. It's strength." The foreman tilted his head, as though the concept were foreign. His silence was colder than words, his dismissal absolute. With a flick of his elongated hand, he motioned for the medics to leave. They obeyed without hesitation, their movements in perfect sync, like parts of a single organism. Soon, the chamber was empty but for Elias and the girl. For a long moment, only the hum of the ship filled the air. Then she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, those strange, luminous silver eyes locking on his face. They were filled with confusion, pain, and something else. Wariness. "You." Her voice was cracked. The translator built into the medbed, catching the words a beat later. "You stayed." Elias leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Of course I did. Someone had to." She blinked at him, disbelief flickering across her features. "But the stones mark me. I am cursed. To save me is to invite the same." Elias gave a short laugh, though there was no humor in it. We humans don't really do curses. We do scars. And scars mean you made it. Her brow furrowed, the muscles in her jaw trembling, as if she couldn't decide whether to believe him or recoil. She shifted, wincing at the pain in her side. My people will not see me as you do. To them, I am broken. Elias leaned closer, lowering his voice. Then let them. What matters is that you're still here, breathing. And if they can't see that's worth something, then that's their loss. Her gaze softened, if only for a moment. A shadow of a smile ghosted across her lips, fragile, uncertain. She looked away, silver eyes glinting in the sterile light. You are strange, human, she whispered. Yeah, Elias said, leaning back in his chair with a tired sigh. I've been told that before. The ship shifted slightly as it cut through orbit, a gentle lurch that sent ripples of light across the medbay walls. Through a narrow viewport, Elias could see the alien homeworld below, an expanse of green crystal forests and sprawling silver cities glowing like constellations against the dark. It was breathtaking. But he couldn't stop thinking about the girl beside him, and how the same people who built that shining world would rather have left her to die. He looked at her again. She was watching him now, quiet, as though trying to puzzle him out, as though she had never seen anyone like him before. And she hadn't, because in this place where survival meant abandoning the fallen, Elias Kane had done something unforgivable. He had refused to let go. And for the first time since the rocks came down, the girl with silver eyes didn't feel entirely alone. Chapter 3. Between Stars and Shadows. The ship drifted in orbit, its engines humming like a distant heartbeat. Within the metallic corridors, the air was cool and sharp, carrying faint undertones of ozone and sterilized alloy. The alien crew moved with their usual eerie coordination, long strides perfectly timed, gestures sharp and calculated, their voices hushed like ritual. They avoided Elias, and when their silver eyes brushed him, it was with something between suspicion and disdain. He ignored them, mostly, but he couldn't ignore how they treated Sarah. She was healed enough to walk, though every movement was still stiff with pain. Her kin passed her in silence, their gazes sliding off her as if she weren't there. When she lingered too close, they adjusted their course with surgical precision to avoid her, as though she were contamination clinging to the air. No one spoke to her. No one even acknowledged her survival. Elias caught it all in the corners of his vision, each act of dismissal burning hotter in his chest. Back home, scars were stories, marks of survival to be honored. Here, Sarah was a walking shame. One evening, though evening was meaningless in orbit, he found her on the observation deck. The chamber stretched like a dome of transparent alloy, stars scattered endlessly beyond. Constellations foreign to his eyes shimmer with unnatural colors, greens and violets and molten orange, hues impossible to see from Earth. Below, the alien homeworld sprawled, a sea of emerald crystal forests and cities that glowed like constellations fallen to the surface. It should have been beautiful, but Sarah stood apart, her arms wrapped around herself, her silver eyes fixed on the world below with the hollowness of someone who had no place in it. Elias stepped forward, the hum of the deck panels under his boots breaking the silence. "Quite the view," he said softly. She didn't turn, didn't blink. "It is nothing to me now. That world does not claim me." Elias moved to stand beside her. The transparent alloy stretched above them like an ocean of glass, reflecting the faint blue glow of the ship's systems. He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets, letting the silence breathe between them. Finally, he asked, "Is that why they won't look at you? Because you lived?" Her jaw tightened. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass, silver eyes gleaming like moons. "Among my kind, weakness spreads. It must be cut away. To survive by another's hand is shame. To be rescued is worse than death." She exhaled shakily. They see me as broken, unclean. Elias leaned on the railing, studying the expanse of stars. Back where I come from, it's the opposite. If someone pulls you out of the fire, you don't bow your head in shame. You thank them. You fight harder because someone believed you were worth saving. Her gaze flickered to him then, searching his face as if for a crack in his conviction. And what if you are not worth it? What if your weakness only drags others down? Elias turned to meet her eyes. Then maybe it's not weakness at all. Maybe it's what makes us human, looking out for each other, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. The silence stretched again, but it wasn't empty this time. Sarah's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to argue, but no words came. Instead, she wrapped her arms tighter around herself, as though trying to hold together pieces that her people had already cast aside. Elias let the moment rest, the faint pulse of the artificial gravity tugging at his boots, grounding him against the endless void outside. He thought of Earth, the way city skylines glowed at night, neon against smog, the way you could walk into a bar bruised and broken and still find someone to sit with you. It wasn't perfect, but it was human. Sarah finally whispered, almost too low for the translator to catch. You are strange, different. You fight against inevitability. He gave a small, wry smile. Yeah, that's kind of what we do best. Her eyes lingered on him, silver light reflecting starlight. For the first time, her gaze didn't feel hollow. There was something there now, a flicker of curiosity, a fragile spark of trust. They stood together in the silence of the stars, two outsiders orbiting a world that would not claim them. For Sarah, the weight of shame pressed heavy. For Elias, the stubborn fire of humanity burned brighter. Between stars and shadows, a bond was beginning to take shape, fragile, improbable, and wholly defiant of the galaxy's cold logic. The artificial gravity flickered, then died. Elias's boots lifted from the floor, his stomach twisting as his body floated free. Around him, alien crews strapped themselves into mag harnesses and drew their sleek, crescent-shaped weapons, plasma-edged blades that shimmered faintly in the strobing red light. Sarah drifted into the medbay entrance, still pale, still limping from her injuries, but her eyes sharp with something Elias hadn't seen before, fear stripped bare. Stay here. One of the crew barked at her, voice laced with scorn. You are already weak. Do not hinder us further. Sarah flinched but said nothing. Elias felt heat crawl up his neck. She's not a hindrance, he snapped, gripping the side rail as another tremor shook the hull. She's still breathing. That's more than some of you'll manage if those raiders cut through. The alien only sneered and pushed off, gliding down the corridor toward the airlocks with inhuman grace. Elias spat a curse under his breath, then looked to Sarah. Her silver eyes were locked on him, a silent question trembling there. Another impact rocked the ship, this one closer. Sparks burst from the ceiling. The lights flickered, and then the hull screamed. Raiders breached. The corridor filled with chaos. Armored figures poured through the rupture, their suits jagged and black, exhaling bursts of blue gas with each movement. They carried brutal plasma cutters and grappling lines, moving like predators through the weightless air. The alien crew met them with elegance and precision, slicing through raider lines with practiced strikes. Elias had no such training, no weapon, no grace, but he had stubbornness. He launched himself off the wall, crashing clumsily into the nearest raider. They spun wildly, colliding with a bulkhead. The raider swung a cutter, plasma hissing inches from Elias's visor. Heart pounding. Elias ripped a loose oxygen tank from his mount on the wall and smashed it into the raider's helmet. The impact cracked glass, vapor vented in a screaming hiss, and the raider went limp. Elias shoved him away, breath ragged. His fists ached. His knuckles throbbed inside the gloves, and yet a grin split his face, raw, reckless. Sarah had seen it. Her lips parted, her breath caught in shock. No alien fought like that, with desperation, with fire. Another raider lunged for her. Move! Elias roared. He flung himself between them, grabbing a floating toolkit, hurling it like a missile. Wrenches and steel fragments scattered across the corridor, colliding with the raider's faceplate, buying Elias enough time to slam into him shoulder first. They spiraled together, a storm of limbs, until Elias jammed his gauntlet into the raider's intake valve and ripped. The enemy convulsed, lights on his suit guttering. The corridor was a storm of sound. Screams, plasma crackles, the distant hum of engines fighting to stabilize. Elias's breath came ragged, his vision blurred, but he kept moving, clawing, improvising. He wrapped a loose cable around one raider's throat, using his momentum to yank him into a glowing plasma blade swung by an alien crewman. He tore a vent panel from the wall and used it as a shield, sparks raining each time a cutter slammed against it. Where the alien crew moved like dancers, Elias was chaos incarnate, raw, bloody, unpredictable, and somehow it worked. When the last raider was forced back into breach, repelled by sheer resistance, the artificial gravity flickered back on. Elias collapsed against the floor, chest heaving, body slick with sweat beneath his armor. His knuckles bled, his ribs screamed. He coughed and laughed, the sound ragged but alive. Silence hung heavy in the corridor. The alien crew stared at him. No words, no praise, only silent calculation. They could not understand how a human, graceless and untrained, had fought like that. But Sarah understood. She drifted forward, still pale, still trembling, but her eyes, those luminous silver eyes, burned with something new. "Ah, you," her voice cracked. "You fight like the stars are burning in your veins." Elias smirked, leaning his head back against the wall. "Nah, just a little human stubbornness." For a moment, the weight of shame that had pressed down on her since the rocks lifted. In this chaos, in this fire, she saw what her people could not. That weakness and defiance were not opposites. That survival was more than logic. And that maybe, just maybe, the strange human who refused to leave her behind was more dangerous and more extraordinary than any blade of plasma. Chapter 5. A Heart Made of Defiance. The council chamber was a cathedral of glass and crystal. Towers of translucent stone rose high above, their surfaces alive with pulsing veins of light that mirrored the rhythm of the alien world's twin suns. The floor beneath Elias's boots gleamed like polished obsidian, so smooth he could see his reflection, sweat-streaked, blood still faintly staining his collar. At the far end of the chamber stood the alien council, 12 figures, tall and austere, draped in flowing garments threaded with liquid silver. Their faces were unreadable masks, their silver eyes cold as moons. The air carried a faint scent of ozone and burning minerals, sharp enough to sting Elias's nose. Sarah stood beside him, shoulders drawn in, head bowed. Her skin shimmered faintly under the harsh light, but her body language was small, withdrawn, like someone preparing to be erased. The foreman's voice rang out first, echoing across the chamber. This human interfered with the order's survival. He lifted what was meant to remain buried. He risked contamination, endangered himself and our kind. And worst, he encouraged the tainted one to believe she has worth. Elias's fists clenched at his sides. He could feel every eye on him, every ounce of their contempt pressing down. "Is this true?" one of the counselors asked, her voice low and sharp as a blade. Elias raised his head. His heart thundered, but his voice came steady. "It's true. I pulled her out. I saved her. And I'd do it again." A ripple of disdain spread through the chamber. Alien hands shifting, robes stirring like the whisper of knives. Why? Another demanded. She was already condemned. In saving her, you have broken our law. Do you not understand? Mercy breeds weakness. Weakness brings death. Elias laughed once, bitter. Yeah, I've heard that before. But let me tell you something. Back where I come from, mercy is the reason we're still standing. Weakness, he jabbed a finger toward them, voice rising, isn't leaving someone behind. Weakness is pretending you're strong, because you don't care who you lose along the way. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Alien eyes narrowed, their silver glow hardening like steel. Arrogant human, the foreman hissed. You dare defy traditions older than your species has walked the stars. Elias took a step forward, boots ringing on the obsidian floor. Damn right I do. If your traditions tell you to let a child die crushed under stone, then maybe it's not tradition. It's cowardice. We humans, we drag each other out of rubble. Even when it kills us, we don't let go. Ever. The chamber pulsed with silence, heavy, charged. Beside him, Sarah trembled. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She lowered her eyes, shame etched into every line of her posture. The council's judgment pressed down on her like a mountain, condemnation dressed as law. Elias turned toward her, softer now. Sarah. Her eyes lifted, silver flickering with confusion. You're not broken, he said. Not to me. You survived something that should have killed you. That's not shame, that's strength. And if they can't see it, then they're blind. Her breath caught. The words cracked something deep inside her, a dam straining against centuries of law and silence. The council moved as one, their voices rising in unison. Enough. The human will be silenced. The tainted one will be exiled. This defiance ends now. Sarah's knees buckled, but she caught herself. For a heartbeat, she almost folded under their decree. Almost. Then she looked at Elias, at the fire in his eyes, at the defiance burning in every word he had spoken, not for himself, but for her. And something inside her shifted. She straightened. When she spoke, her voice cracked at first, but then steadied, resonating through the chamber. No. The council froze. Alien heads turned. Sarah lifted her chin. I will not bow to your shame. This human, he showed me that survival is not weakness, that scars are not curses. He gave me back what you tried to bury. My voice. Her silver eyes blazed now, bright as stars. The council stirred, their unity fractured by shock. The foreman hissed, his voice sharp with fury. You would dare stand with him? Against your people? Sarah glanced at Elias, then back at them. Her answer was steady. I would. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. The pulsing veins of light in the crystalline chamber dimmed, as though the world itself held its breath. Elias exhaled slowly, a small, grim smile tugging at his lips. Guess that makes two of us. Together, human and alien stood before the council, defiance carved into their stances, fragile but unbreakable. And for the first time, Elias saw in Sarah's eyes not just fear or shame, but fire, a heart made of defiance. Chapter 6. Beneath the burning sky. The twin suns bled across the horizon, staining the crystalline canyons in shades of molten gold and crimson. Shards of jagged crystal jetted from the earth like the bones of a broken god, reflecting the light into blinding rivers of fire. The air smelled of scorched minerals and hot dust, dry and acrid against Elias's tongue. He ran. His boots pounded against fractured stone as the alarms of the city faded behind them, replaced by the distant wail of pursuit horns. Sarah stumbled beside him, her movements uneven, breath ragged. She still limped from the injuries of the collapse, but she kept going, her silver eyes burning with the same fire that had carried her through the council chamber. Behind them, The alien guards spread across the canyon ridge, tall silhouettes framed by the burning sky, their weapons gleaming with faint plasma edges. They were methodical, relentless, unbothered by the jagged terrain. Elias and Sarah were prey. "They'll catch us," Sarah gasped, clutching her side as they ducked beneath a jagged overhang. "They will not stop until we are erased." Elias pulled her close, shielding her with his body as shards of crystal rained from above. His own lungs burned, sweat plastering his shirt to his back. He forced a grin, though his chest felt like fire. "Then we make it hard for them," he said. "That's the human way." Sarah gave him a look, half incredulous, half desperate. "You fight inevitability with words. They fight it with blades." "Yeah, well, sometimes words are sharper." Elias knelt, searching the terrain. The canyon floor was alive with veins of glowing crystal, humming faintly as if the planet itself had a pulse. He pulled a steel tool from his belt, wedging it into one of the cracks. Sparks leapt, light flaring as the veins shuddered. Sarah's eyes widened. "That will—" The vein exploded, sending a wave of blinding energy rippling across the ground. The pursuing guards reeled, thrown off balance as arcs of plasma scorched their formation. Elias staggered back, dragging Sarah with him as shards of hot crystal whistled through the air. "See," Elias panted. "Improvisation. We're good at that." Her lips parted, trembling between disbelief and awe. "You are reckless. Insane." He shot her a quick, ragged grin. "And still alive." They pressed on, weaving between pillars of crystal that caught the sun's light and refracted it into endless firestorms of color. Every step was agony for Sarah, but Elias stayed close, steadying her, his arm firm around her waist. The horn sounded again, closer now. They reached a ridge that overlooked a river, if it could be called that. The water glowed faintly, iridescent, flowing thick and slow like liquid fire. The air above it shimmered with heat, waves of distortion bending the canyon walls. Sarah froze, horror in her eyes. "We cannot cross. That river is death." Elias scanned the jagged banks. No bridges, no easy crossings. The guard shadows stretched longer on the cliffs above. His pulse hammered in his ears. "Maybe," he said, crouching to test the heat with his glove. The material hissed, edges blackening almost instantly. "But death behind us feels a little more certain." Sarah trembled, staring at the glowing river as if it embodied every curse her people had placed on her. Then she looked at Elias. His face was set, jaw clenched, defiance blazing in his tired eyes. "You would cross," she whispered. "If it means you don't get left behind, yeah." The guards shouted from the ridge, their voices echoing through the canyon. Plasma fire hissed against the rocks, scorching the stone where Elias had stood moments before. He grabbed Sarah's hand. "Trust me." For a moment, she hesitated. She saw the burning river, the hunters above, the shame her people had carved into her since birth. Then she looked at the human whose blistered hands had lifted stone, whose reckless fire had turned hopeless battles into survival, and she leapt with him. The heat wrapped around them like a furnace, the glowing currents beneath a living inferno. Elias's boots hit the edge of a narrow rock shelf in the middle of the river. He steadied Sarah, the roar of the liquid fire deafening in his ears. On the far bank, freedom shimmered beneath the burning sky. Sarah's grip tightened on his hand, her voice shaking but sure. "You would not leave me under the rocks, and I will not leave you here." Elias grinned through the sweat dripping down his face. "That's the spirit." And together, they ran across the fire. Chapter 7. In the silence, a choice. The ridge was silent except for the wind. It hissed softly over the jagged crystal spires, carrying the scent of scorched minerals and distant smoke. Twin moons had risen now, casting a pale violet glow across the canyon. Their light refracted through the crystalline walls until the whole world shimmered as though wrapped in a dream. Elias lay on his back against a slab of stone, chest heaving, every muscle screaming after the river crossing. His skin felt raw from heat. His throat burned from breathing fire-tainted air. But they were alive, against the odds, against pursuit, against the laws of Sarah's people. They were alive. Beside him, Sarah sat with her knees drawn to her chest. The glow of the moons painted her skin in shades of pearl and shadow. Her silver eyes seemed softer here, less like cold mirrors and more like liquid light. Yet her body trembled, not just from exhaustion, but from something deeper. For a long while, neither spoke. The hum of the world itself seemed to fill the silence. The faint vibration of crystal veins beneath the stone, the whisper wind carrying alien scents Elias couldn't name. Finally, Sarah's voice broke the stillness, barely more than a whisper. "I wish for death beneath the rocks." Elias turned his head toward her, frowning. She hugged her knees tighter, her voice trembling. "When the stones crushed me, I thought it was fate. That to die was better than to rise shamed. My people would never accept me again. I almost welcomed it." Her breath shuddered. "And then you came." The words hit Elias harder than he expected. He pushed himself upright slowly, wincing at the ache in his ribs. "Sarah," her eyes lifted to his, shimmering with unshed tears. "I do not understand you. Why risk your life for mine? Why carry me when even my own people would not? Were you human, that you burned so brightly against the dark?" Elias scratched at the back of his neck, a bitter laugh escaping him. "I don't know about brightly. Stupidly, maybe. But where I come from, we don't just walk away. If someone's trapped, if someone's hurting, we fight like hell to pull them out, even if it costs us." "Even if it is hopeless?" she asked softly. "Especially then." The silence stretched again, heavy with her breathing, his words, the weight of a culture colliding with a stubborn truth. Sarah pressed her forehead to her knees, silver eyes closing. For the first time, her shoulders shook, not with weakness, but release. A sob escaped her lips, quiet, raw. Elias hesitated, then reached out. His hand brushed against hers, tentative, callous fingers meeting her delicate, glowing skin. She flinched at first, then stilled. Slowly, her hand turned, her fingers threading with his. Her skin was cool, almost electric under his touch. "I am afraid," she admitted, her voice trembling like a blade in the wind. "Afraid of them. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of failing again." Elias squeezed her hand gently. "Yeah, me too." Her eyes flicked open at that, startled. "You?" "Of course. Fear's what keeps us sharp. But it's what you do with it that matters." He gave a tired grin. "Me? I use it to keep moving, to keep fighting, to make sure I don't let anyone down." Sarah studied him for a long moment, her gaze piercing yet soft. Something shifted in her expression like a wall cracking. Her lips parted, and in the pale light, a ghost of a smile trembled there. "You are strange," she whispered, "strange and dangerous." Elias chuckled, leaning back against the stone. "I'll take that as a compliment." The moons hung above them, pale sentinels over a fractured world. The air was still, fragile, as though the universe itself held its breath. Sarah leaned against him then, hesitant at first, but steadying as her weight pressed into his shoulder. For the first time since the rocks buried her, since her people cast her aside, Sarah let herself rest. And for the first time, Elias realized in the silence between stars and shadows, something new was taking root. Not passion, not yet, but trust. A fragile bridge between two worlds that had never touched before. A choice. Chapter 8. The promise carved in stone. The ruins rose before them like the ribs of some ancient beast. Broken spires of black stone jutted into the violet sky, their surfaces etched with alien glyphs half swallowed by moss and glowing crystal veins. The air smelled of ash and iron, the ruins alive with a low, vibrating hum, as though they remembered every scream and oath spoken within their walls. Elias's boots crunched on shattered stone as he helped Sarah up the last ridge. She leaned heavily on him, her side still raw with pain, but her silver eyes never wavered. Behind them, horns echoed again to the canyon, closer now. Their pursuers had not given up. Elias scanned the ruins, heart pounding. Nowhere left to run. Sarah followed his gaze, her lips trembling. They will not stop. They will kill you for defying them. They will kill me for standing with you. Elias tightened his grip on the broken metal pipe he carried, salvaged along the way, crude but solid. Then we don't run. We stand. Sarah's eyes widened. Stand? Against them? There are too many. Elias grinned, though sweat burned his eyes. Good. Makes it interesting. The first figures appeared on the ridge, alien guards in silver armor, their plasma blades glowing like shards of starlight. They descended with chilling precision, voices echoing in unison. Surrender. The tainted one will be erased. The human will be executed. This is law. Elias stepped forward, pipe slung across his shoulder. You call it law. I call it cowardice. The lead guard raised his blade. You will not survive. Elias spat into the dust. Yeah, I've been told that before. The fight exploded like thunder. Plasma blades slashed, their hiss searing the air. Elias ducked low, swinging the pipe with raw fury. It cracked against a guard's helmet, sparks erupting as the alien reeled. Another lunge, blade grazing Elias's arm, burning through fabric and flesh. Pain flared white-hot, but he roared through it, slamming his shoulder into the attacker and sending both of them crashing into a crumbling pillar. Sarah stumbled back, clutching her side. Her people's voices rose around her, cold, merciless, inevitable. For a heartbeat, shame gripped her throat. The shame of being cast out, of being unworthy. Then she saw him, bleeding battered, still swinging with reckless defiance. He would not leave me under the rocks. Sarah's breath caught fire. With a cry that tore from the depths of her chest, she seized a fallen plasma blade. Its weight seared her palms, but she raised it high, silver eyes blazing. When the next guard lunged for Elias, Sarah met him. Their blades clashed, sparks scattering across the ruins. Her arms trembled, but she did not falter. Stand with me, Elias shouted, his voice ragged but unyielding. And she did. Together they fought, Elias with raw instinct, turning broken stone and steel into weapons. Sarah with newfound fury, striking not for honor as her people defined it, but for the right to live on her own terms. The guards faltered, not because Elias was stronger, not because Sarah was trained, but because together they fought with something her people had forgotten: loyalty, defiance, hope. Finally, the last guard staggered back, bleeding light from a cracked chest plate. He stared at them, human and alien side by side, battered but unbroken. This is heresy, he spat. No, Elias growled, lifting his makeshift weapon. This is survival, real survival. The guard hesitated, then retreated into the shadows with the others, their formation broken. The ruins fell silent again. Only Elias's ragged breathing and Sarah's trembling gasps filled the air. She dropped the blade, her hands raw and blistered, then turned to him. He swayed on his feet, blood streaking his arm, dust coating his face. But when he looked at her, he grinned. Told you, he panted. We stand. Sarah's chest ached, not from pain, but from something deeper, something new. She stepped closer, her silver eyes wet with tears. Her voice cracked, but the words were steady. You would not leave me under the rocks, she whispered, and I will never leave you, human. Elias met her gaze, his grin softening into something quieter, truer. Good, because I'm not planning on letting go. They stood together beneath the burning sky, two defiant figures in the ruins of an ancient world. Around them, the stones whispered of laws and traditions older than empires. But within them burned something greater, a promise carved not in law, but in loyalty, a promise that would outlast the stars. The starship's engines hummed like a heartbeat through the hull, steady and alive. Beyond the viewport, alien constellations shimmered, violet spirals, green fire, and fractured galaxies scattering light into the void. Far below, the alien world glowed with its neon-lit cities, rivers of crystal threading like veins across its surface. Elias stood there, hands braced against the glass, bandages stark against his skin. He looked weary, scarred, but unbroken. The faint tug of artificial gravity held him grounded, yet his eyes seemed fixed on something far beyond. Behind him, soft footsteps. Sarah approached, her silver eyes catching starlight. No longer bowed by shame, she carried herself tall, though her side still bore the mark of survival. She stopped beside him, her reflection merging with his in the glass. "They will never take us back," she said quietly. "Good," Elias replied, turning his head toward her with a tired smile. "Means we get to make something new." For a moment, silence. The stars watched. The engines whispered. Then Sarah's hand found his, cool and trembling but sure. "You gave me back my life," she whispered. "Not as I defined it, but as I choose it, with you." Elias squeezed her hand, eyes bright. "And I'll keep choosing you, every time." The two stood side by side, framed by the infinite, scarred, defiant, bound not by law but by choice. And as the starship cut its path through alien constellations, the galaxy seemed to whisper the truth Elias had fought to prove. Humanity's greatest strength was never survival. It was refusing to let go.